continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neill as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord.
Norman Harrington is fighting the most critical battle of his young life. A war for the affection of his wife, Rita. Though Rita has assured him again and again that her feelings for her father, Eddie Jacks, are separate from her feelings for him, Norman still demands 100% of her love. Now, Norman has received an urgent message to meet Rita's father on the wharf. A message he wants desperately to ignore.
Where's Rita? Sit down. Well, is she here? I got to thinking, Norm. You know, you and I never really had a chance to get together. You asked me to meet the two of you here. Yeah, I know I did. And I started after Rita, but you see... What is it with you? Why does everything have to be a snow job? Look, you're here now. Why don't you sit down for a while and we have a little talk? I don't like the way you got me here. No, hold on a second. I gotta talk to you. Man to man? No. Father to son-in-law. Please. Okay. It'd be a terrible thing for Rita if the two men in her life couldn't have a civil conversation. Why don't you stop using Rita? Come on, kid. Will you ease off a bit? Listen to you. You use Rita to get me down here. You use Rita to get a job at Ada's. And now you're using Rita trying to get next to my grandfather. Oh, that's a little out of line, son. If there's anything out of line, it's you. And stop calling me son. The name's Norman. But it's the last name that gets you, isn't it? The Harrington. Influence, wealth, connections. That's what brought you back to this town, isn't it? You walked out on Rita Jacks. You didn't want anything to do with her. But when you found out that she had a new name, you broke your neck getting back here. The new name of Mrs. Norman Harrington. That rings a bell, doesn't it? A solid gold Martin Peyton bell. Have you finished? Not yet. I still have one more chapter. Maybe somebody forgot to tell you that the name Norman Harrington doesn't ring a bell with Martin Peyton. Not even the doorbell. He's out of the race. Scratched. No roses, no champagne, no big money winners, nothing. Zero. Well, that's quite a testimonial. Am I supposed to cry or clap? Just leave Rita alone. You're forgetting something. She's my daughter. You forgot it for 18 years. You don't know one thing about what I forgot or what I remembered. Not about my daughter, not about my wife, not about this town. You don't know anything about me or anybody like me. But I know you. Norman Harrington. Raised in a big house on a hill. Got the sniffles. And 10 specialists took his temperature. Lost a tooth, and somebody stuck a $20 bill under his pillow. But one day he got bored with having everything brought to him on a silver platter. And he'd read somewhere that people who earn their own way have a mysterious happiness. He thought that was romantic, adventurous. So he made a big show of turning his back on everything that he had. But he made sure that everybody saw how hard he was working and how much he had to give up. We even married a girl from across the tracks to make the picture complete. What book have you been reading? Oh, I've had you up to here, Mr. Rebel, Mr. Holy Joe Hero, Mr. Zero. Yeah, I came back when I heard that Reed had married a Harrington. But not to make a touch. Not to see if I could siphon off some of that fortune that you say you don't care about, while you go around accusing everybody else of wanting it. I came back because I've seen guys like you operate before. You rent the attic, and you go without. But it's all just for show. You've always got that crutch. You can crawl back like the prodigal son anytime you want, and you know it. I came back because I want to see that nothing happens to Rita when you've had enough of this just plain folks act. And when that girl from the other side of town doesn't fit into the picture anymore. Shut up! Maybe we know each other a little better now. You all right, Norman? Get away. Norman? Norman? Are you okay, kid?
Yeah, I'm okay.
We shouldn't have lost our tempers that way. Let's keep this just between you and me, shall we? If Rita ever heard about it, you know what it could do to her.
It's just between you and me, Eddie. Just you and me.
Yes, sir. I'll set it up right away. Yes, right, sir. Oh, Mr. Cord?
Is Mr. Sloan in?
He said he'd be waiting for you in the dining room.
Thank you. Betty? Betty? How are you?
I'm fine.
Aren't you going to ask me how I am? That's the formula, isn't it? I mean, I just can't get used to casually bumping into my wife around town. It's just a little peculiarity of mine.
It's going to happen.
So it seems. All the out-of-town businessmen stay here, you stay here. Have you filed for divorce? I'm going to fight it, Betty. You know that, don't you?
Stephen, it won't do any good.
It'll only make it ugly, right?
You said it, not me.
You're so sure, so smug.
Not smug, Stephen, just clear.
Oh, no, that you're not. But you're going to be. Now, the court has granted me a hearing on the old man's incompetence. It's set for tomorrow. I want you to be there.
Why?
Because you still believe the lie Adrienne told you? But you won't after tomorrow.
You sound very sure of that.
Yes, I am.
Well, what about the fact that you wanted her, pursued her? Is the judge going to hand down a decision about that, too?
Just be there. Betty. I deposited some money in your account in the bank.
Stephen, that wasn't necessary.
I don't want you taking money from Martin Peyton or anybody else. Not as long as we're man and wife.
Man and wife.
Come in.
I'm not disturbing you, am I?
Oh, not at all. What is it?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, you said something about us having lunch together today. Did you forget?
As a matter of fact, I did. My apologies. At lunchtime, I was on the phone with one of my representatives in New York. I ate up here.
I looked for you before.
Yes, I had business in town.
Oh, I would like to have gone with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Why are you avoiding me, Martin?
Avoiding you? Oh, what a strange idea.
Really? It seems to me as if I almost have to make an appointment to see you nowadays. You know, for a couple who's getting married, we've made very few plans.
What sort of plans? You know, we're hardly honeymooners.
No. But there are still few details to be worked out. For example, I have to get a wardrobe together.
Oh, yes, of course. And you want to debate the correct ratio of formal evening gowns to afternoon frocks.
I could use your help. Also, if you plan to do a lot of extra entertaining in the next few months, I think we should increase the staff.
Well, I was thinking of dismissing it.
What?
Yes, you know that telephone call I mentioned? Well, my man in New York says that my interest there could stand some personal supervision.
New York?
You've told me dozens of times how much you love it. How alive you feel when you're there.
Actually, I'm rather tired of the city. Besides, all of the people who are any fun will be wintering out of town.
Well, so much the better. We can take a suite on Park Avenue. We can spend the winter getting to know each other.
Don't be ridiculous, Martin. We know each other perfectly well. Besides, you despise those high-rise monstrosities.
Oh, I'm not so sure. I'm told that they're quite luxurious and most comfortable inside. It would also solve the problem of a house of this size. You know, the maintenance, the gardeners, and, well...
You're toying with me, aren't you, Martin? You're not thinking of moving at all.
I'm really thinking of it quite seriously. If a man of my age stays in one place too long, he goes stale. Yes, I intend to remain active. Yes, a change of scene might be just the thing.
Philip hated New York.
Well, I'm not Philip. Philip adored you to distraction. I don't. He allowed you to drag him to imbecilic parties. Was constantly a witness to your indiscretions. Well, I don't intend to be. I'm warning you, Adrienne. If we go to New York, no matter where we go, don't expect to resume the life you led with your former friends. I expect you to behave like a lady, and I demand it.
Nobody's told me that since Mother.
But unfortunately, she didn't say it often enough.
I had to find my own friends in New York. Phillips didn't accept me.
And why should they? You never took the slightest interest in his work.
Philip was a saint. And like all saints, he was a bore.
You call him a bore? Why, an evening spent with Philip could open more windows into the human soul than all your so-called philosophers combined. He was the only man I ever knew who was genuinely above pettiness, who dealt only with the profound. Philip was perfectly happy in his work, and his work was great. He could have saved hundreds of thousands of lives.
If he hadn't married me.
Yes.
You pretend to respect him so much. Yet you're holding a letter he wrote to you in confidence over my head. You know he never intended it to be used as a weapon against me, not Philip. Aren't you betraying his memory by using it as one?
Don't ever make that suggestion again. Never. Do you understand? If there were any justice in the world, you'd never be allowed to speak his name.
So Martin Peyton has a sacred cow after all. That's why you've been avoiding me.
Get out of my room.
What are you afraid of, Martin? That I'll make a fool out of you? Don't worry. I know the rules. I may not have played fair with Philip, but I wouldn't have known how. He and I were at the opposite ends of the earth. But you and I, Martin, we won't have any problem. We're two of a kind.
Norman?
Oh, grandfather. Did you come down to see your slaves?
If you consider yourself a slave,
Well, I'll tell you what. You come back in 40 minutes and you and I'll split a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
I want to talk to you now.
I'm trying to say it as politely as possible. I'm busy until my break.
You're not only my slave, you're my grandson. And that makes your rudeness inexcusable. I'm sorry we had to start this way, Norman, because I have something to ask of you.
Go ahead, ask. Get it over with.
How do you like your father-in-law?
What's it to you?
Why has he come here right now, out of the blue?
Beats me. Why don't you, ask your chauffeur to go over and get him, and then you can ask him yourself.
Has he been bothering you and Rita?
Well, the sudden interest in Eddie Jacks. What's he ever done to you?
Well, I suspect he thinks he can get his hands on my money through you. No matter how much you dislike me, Norman, it would be extremely unwise of you to support him in such a scheme.
You've got a pretty low opinion of me, don't you?
Well, I don't know how badly you need money. Oh, by the way, Norman, I would consider it entirely appropriate if you'd have Rita's medical bills sent to the house. They would be paid without hesitation and without strings. I wouldn't even require a thank you note.
You're two of a kind.
I beg your pardon.
Eddie Jacks wants to pay Rita's medical bills, too.
Oh, well, I'm considerably more able to afford it.
Well, I'm not for sale. Not today, tomorrow, or ever. Now, how many times do I have to tell you guys that?
You're refreshing, Norman. Very refreshing.